Hi, and a very, very warm welcome to the latest SoulTrader.biz live webinar, live web chat with myself, Rashid Ogunlaru, coach, speaker, author, and founder of SoulTrader.biz. Tonight's talk is called Spring Clean, in fact, your life, your mind, and your business. And I'm absolutely delighted that we're joined by a special guest and a special friend of mine, Diana Powley. Diana, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Well, I'm really thrilled that you are here, and I'm going to do a very brief introduction, Diana, but then I'm going to invite you then to, maybe in a tiny bit more depth, introduce yourself. But Diana is an NLP hypnotherapist. She's also trained in Reiki. She's a healer. She helps people of all backgrounds to overcome unwanted habits, blocks, beliefs that are holding them back. So it might be anything from stopping smoking to fears with public speaking. It could be anything. So that's Diana. I met Diana first. It must be about 10 years ago, Diana. Would you say? Almost.
What was that? I didn't realise. I've been in practice for about 12 years, so
right.
Could have been. But we both have been networking, haven't we? Business networking.
Exactly. We met at a business networking event, and why I'm very keen for Diana to be our guest today is that really today's theme, if you think about it, spring cleaning your life. Well, we know at this time of the year that lots of you will be wanting to spring clean the home, giving it a fresh look, maybe doing some DIY, clearing things out. Spring is synonymous with that. It's a new season. It's a season of rebirth. It's a season of new life and new lights. And so we often think about making changes to our home, but it often sparks people into making all sorts of other changes. And so why we've also called this Spring Clean Your Mind is that sometimes actually it's your mindset that needs a bit of a refresh. And that's where Diana's work is really, really important, because sometimes there can be all sorts of blocks, barriers, and beliefs that are holding you back on all sorts of levels, which I'm sure that we explore. And then in terms of course, then spring cleaning your business. Actually, this is a really good time for you to think, where am I at now? What's really working for me? What are the things I can shift? What are the things that I can change? Perhaps new habits. We were just talking about networking. Maybe it's time for you to go up networking again. It's interesting, too, that this is the start of the financial year. But as well as being an NLP hypnotherapist, Diana's background, first of all, before that, was actually in HR and human resources. She understands also the business side of people dynamics. So, Diana, how have I done in terms of introducing you?
Fantastically well. I don't think I need to add anything there. All I would say is it was HR in multiple fashion retailing, so fast-moving pace of business life. Very bright people, very dynamic people, working with teams, working with senior people, people who were career orientated, who really wanted to get ahead with their life, and so it was a very dynamic environment to work in, and I loved it. It was very different then to switch to being a therapist working on my own, but equally I can draw on those experiences, so I love that ability to be able to do that. But I've got the empathy with people who are working for corporates or perhaps thinking about working for themselves. I've been through that transition myself, so I enjoy working with business people.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You know, lots of people who will have made that transition are listening to this now. They're perhaps starting out, or perhaps they've been in business themselves. Tell me a little bit about, you know, before we really get into the meat of this, what really attracts you to being your own boss personally, and what drew you into being your own boss? Because as we know, it's not an easy transition, and it has its challenges too, which many people who are listening to this will be very mindful of, and so that they'll be really interested to hear whatever tips you'll be sharing later in terms of their mindset, in terms of helping business. But what drew you into this area of wanting to help people and hypnotherapy?
Yes, well, what your listeners may not realise is that between working in a corporate world and becoming a hypnotherapist, in between I raised a family of 3 children and went down with ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. And so there was a period of not working, period of wheelchair care and so on. And during that time I actually had hypnotherapy, which was really beneficial for me, helping me to be calm, helping me to relax, helping me to visualize things getting better and so on. I went through divorce and so on. So it was a pretty low time, but at the time it was able for me to be able to look at my life, look at my beliefs, look at what's important, what isn't important. And as I was coming out of it and starting to get stronger, a friend suggested actually hypnotherapy, and that it would be a good thing to study, and having had that beneficial experience of it, I was very keen to join her. So we both studied it, and out of that I realized I didn't really want to go back into that corporate world of long hours and stress, that I really wanted to work for myself.
That was so chime with so many people who are on this call, who decided they really want to be their own. What was it that particularly, Diana, attracted you, especially to the hypnotherapy? And I know that you're really passionate about really helping people to overcome all sorts and beliefs. Talking just yesterday ahead of over breakfast, having a breakfast catch-up, really talk about this. You were talking about. We began talking about how there are so many aspects that when you are your blocks and barriers that you might not even be aware of it. That you might, you were talking about, for example, I'm sure we'll talk about it. Have that phobia of picking up the phone to make some calls, or you might have a problem in terms of presenting. But what drew you into hypnotherapy specifically, and this thing about helping people overcome those blocks?
I saw how it had helped me deal with my situation of coming out of a difficult marriage, coming out of chronic fatigue, being in a wheelchair, and being able to visualize a different life. And when I studied NLP, I realized how quickly, with very quick processes, one can let go. One can just say, that's in the past, let it go, embrace the future. It's, in the end, all this stuff is a story. Anything that's in the past that you want to let go of, it's a story you just keep on listening to, like a record that keeps playing. And you can decide enough's enough. And once you've decided enough, you're in a fantastic position to say, right, let's change it, let's sort it, let's let it go.
Right, and that's amazing. I mean, in your particular case, isn't it? Having ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, and I remember at the end of it, you ran a 10K run. So you've seen personally what it can do and what it can do for clients. I just want to say a couple of things at this point as we kick off. If you're watching at home, or if you're watching it from where you're from, and I can see that some of you are here, welcome to everyone who's joined us already. If you've got any questions, if you're looking on the website page, you'll see, if you scan down just below this video, it says if you've got a question, you can post it on our Facebook page, on the SoulTrader.biz Facebook page. So just follow that link, click on it, like the page, and then if you post a question, and then we can pick up on it. So you might have any questions about how can you sprinkle in your life, how can you sprinkle in your mind, improve your mindset, your confidence, lots of things that, or your belief systems, lots of things that Diana's beginning to talk about, or you might be wanting tips in terms of sprinkling in your business. Maybe, I think, Diana, when I was thinking about this, I had originally thought that we'd start off on this thing about spring cleaning your life and your home. And I just want to briefly touch on that, and then I want to go into the mind thing, because I think the mind is so important. So I just want to say, for anyone who's watching this, very often at this point, one of my first tips is that you might want to start off with a spring clean around your house. The reason for this is, I've got a saying that you can't pour more water into a full cup. If you're wanting new things in your life, new opportunities in your life, it's really important that you've got some space. And many of us have got such busy lives and such busy minds. And actually, often your house or your home, or your office space for that matter, may well be a reflection of your state of mind. And one of the things that can be really powerful is by having a clear out, room by room, if you can, will create some space. So one of the things I would say is, first of all, start off at home. And I'm going to ask Diana in a moment to add a few thoughts and a few tips by this, but perhaps room by room, just look at at your house. Look at what's there, what's not needed, what can you give away, what can you recycle, what could somebody else benefit from. Start off in the room that you feel most comfortable with, and think about that. What haven't you used perhaps for 6 months, a year, or what have you? This is typically the case. Recycle it, give it to somebody else. and so on. As you begin to clear things, you'll have far more of a clear space. And I'd also say, don't be too quick to fill that particular space. Sometimes, you know, when you've cleared things out, you've got that feeling of, oh my goodness, how lovely it is. We've got the space, the front room's looking more clear now, or the kitchen's looking more clear now, and so on. So that's my first tip, and it can be very, very psychologically powerful, because then suddenly we've created a change. And if you're at a point where you're wanting to make some changes in terms of your business, or in terms of any other aspects of your life, relationships and so on, you've started from a really good point. And Diana, I just want to bring you in at that point, in terms of, we're talking about the physical home as perhaps the starting point, and then again, office, clearing the desk and so on.
Yes.
And I want to just, a virtual thing is, you might have lots of files on emails, and you clear those things out and come up with some simple systems. But Diana, do you want to add anything about how the stuff in the house can have an impact on people, and how that can be a really good place to start?
Yes, I think that if you've got an area that's really troubling you, maybe it's your desk, maybe it's the filing. If there's an area that you're really, really struggling with, and just to look at it upsets you, my suggestion would be, start with somewhere or something a bit easier. Deal with it in bite-sized chunks, so that you can actually start then to build up a belief, I can deal with this. Don't go into the deep end, because then you could get overwhelmed. Start with something you can do and chip away at it, and then know, I can do this. And then start to look at the area that's the real challenge for you. And maybe deal with the corner of the desk, deal with one part of it, and start to break it down. Create small piles of filing to be thrown out, things to do, priorities, and then start with some lists about prioritizing what you want to do. I'm very in favor of lists, but not just lists of their own sake, but actually starting to build in within the lists A's, B's, and C's. A's as in, this has got to be done today. B's as in, I'd like to be done today, but it could be done tomorrow or the next day. And C's, it'd be useful to do this sometime soon. And to start to really get some clarity into your mind and clarity on your desk, so that then you can start to make some changes. But don't dip into the deep end at the beginning. Start to build a belief within yourself, I can deal with this.
And I think that's a really good point, because we know with this thing about staff at home or in the workplace, icons everywhere, or it's a particular room in the house, can be really, really powerful, that Diana's giving. And then I like that thing about starting from that point of strength. I think that, Diana, that obviously when it comes to spring cleaning your life, there are other things that will begin to come into view, and we can perhaps pick up on them later. It might be you can begin to think about, okay, what relationships are serving me, what relationships aren't so much serving me, who are the people I want to be seeing, and so on. But I think that will be worth us coming back to once we've begun to talk a little bit about the spring cleaning your mind. So maybe that's a good time now that we've flagged up, having that clear, that sort out at home and in the office or your office space, and then moving on to the mind, because as we were discussing it, everything is going to be dependent on your state of mind, your mindset, your confidence, whether you can have the confidence to start out in business, whether you can have that confidence to make that call, to show up to that networking event, to be able to stand up in front of people and pitch, to approach that person, say, can you introduce me to this person, in every single level. Diana, tell me from your experience, why is this thing of beliefs so powerful? And you're an expert on this.
If you can hear me, I've lost you now, Rashid. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can.
All right. Well, in terms of beliefs, I mean, it's fundamental. If you don't believe you can do something, then there's a pretty good chance you won't achieve it. If you believe, however, I can do it, I want to do it, and I can do it, then you're a head start over a lot of other people. For example, business networking. If you're terrified of public speaking, then you'll resist going to business networking. If you hate dealing with IT issues, perhaps you'll be fearful of creating a website. If it's finance that you're worried about, your tax and accounts, then you'll resist doing that. So the more that you can be in your flow of doing all these different things, the more chance you've got of success. Because at the end of the day, as a business owner, you've got to have some knowledge and awareness and ability in all areas. We can seek out help, but we still need to have a little bit of knowledge. And on that point, we need to accept that we can't be good at everything. And don't worry about that. We can't be good at everything. We can seek the help for the areas that we need help on. And that's normal.
Right.
That's being human.
Right. And this is such an important point. Right. This is such an important point where you're saying, isn't it, that and the thing that comes to my mind as you say that, and we touched on this when we were chatting, is awareness. I think it's this thing about, first of all, when it comes to mindset, being aware. Where am I at? What are the areas that I'm comfortable with? What are my strengths? And beginning to be aware of those strengths, isn't it? Because I mean, you really began to point to this. You know, what are my strengths? What are the things that I'm really good at? I'm really recognizing that we live in a world in which very often, from when we're brought up, we're taught to focus. Oh, you should be better at maths. We should be better at this. We should be better at that. I should be better with people. I should be better at speaking up in front of class. I should be as good as my brother or my sister. And very often, that's where some of these beliefs that are problems that you began to point to come from. So that then, when we begin to bury our head in the sand,
childhood, isn't it?
Often.
It started either in the home, as you say, talking about sibling rivalry, or it can come from the classroom. You know, if you have dyslexia, for example, maybe when it comes to everyone reading a little bit from the book in the classroom or having to stand up and read something, then you're going to be making mistakes, stumbling over your words, and then feel embarrassed. And that can kick off a whole lifetime of fear of public speaking, just from that small incident as a child.
Hugely, and I think it's so important as a business owner where you're the captain of the ship and you're responsible for it. And I like the bit where you were saying, Diana, that you need to, as a business owner, have some level of skill and oversight in all areas. It doesn't mean you need to do everything yourself. It doesn't mean, but you've got to be aware of it because you're the captain of the ship. And it's like I remember speaking to a finance expert, and when he, for example, when it comes to finance, he says, with finance, you can delegate responsibility, but you can't abdicate it. And it's in fact the same for all aspects of our business. But I think what's so powerful about you pointing out these beliefs and these challenges that can often spring back to childhood and so on, or in the classroom, is that when it comes to business, there may well be really significant things in terms of you moving forward in your business, that if you're not aware of this, the way you are absolutely stunting it, because you might think, okay, I wasn't creative, so I'm really having a block here when it comes to the website. I'm not as outgoing as my brother or my sister. So, and that stops you from going out there to networking events or presenting. Or you might be thinking to yourself, okay, and this is a common one. This is a huge one, and particularly I think with lots of sole traders, people are passionate about doing what they're doing. There might well be beliefs around money or whatever, and so on, and value. And they might think, oh, I wasn't good at maths when I was a kid, for example. That might have been a belief that I might have held at one point. I'm not good at maths or what have you. I realised actually it wasn't true, because when I was taught by some teachers, I progressed and who could connect with me, and with others I didn't so much so. So I would say I can't this, because if there's a shred of evidence that you can, or even if one time you can, then that belief isn't wholly true. But this is where it becomes so significant, isn't it, Diana? Because it means that business owner, that you may be burying your head in the sand when it comes to finances, and you might be fined for that tax thing because you've ignored it. It might be that you haven't addressed your website for years because you think you're not creative, or you've not. I remember once, very, very briefly, and I think I may have shared with you, meeting a guy. He was an accountant, ironically, lovely guy. I mentioned him in the Soul Trader book. Really warm, really personable. He worked as a high-end accountant. For him, if he each client, because they were pop stars, they were entertainers and so on, would be worth thousands and thousands, and people very rarely change their accountant. And we were chatting a little bit, and he talked about how you'd often get invites to all sorts of in music industry events and so on. And he was a bit of a shyer person. He very rarely went to them. Some of it was because of lifestyle and because he wanted to spend a lot of time at home in the evenings, but some of them were lunchtime and other times, but he didn't. I knew that actually he was wonderful with people. He was warm, naturally, he'd sold stuff to me just by him being him, but he wasn't. And that could be, how much of these beliefs that you're holding, holding your birth, how much could that be worth to you in business, in opportunities, and so on? Anything else you want to add to that, Diana? Because it's huge, this belief stuff and this mindset when it comes to the actual practical stuff of your day-to-day business.
Absolutely. And some people, they aren't aware that they are holding that belief. They just give themselves excuses as to why they don't want to do it. They haven't got time, perhaps, that they'd be better using their time doing something else. And sometimes it can be as fundamental as not believing they deserve to be a success. Even bigger. So they might have skills in a number of different areas, but if they think, I'll never make it, why should I be a success? Why should I be the one people go to? Then it's just going to sabotage them straight away. So you've got to start believing, yes, if I put the effort in, I stand as good a chance of being good at this and a success as anybody else.
It's really interesting. You know, it's so interesting, isn't it? That I was with somebody yesterday, I was coaching their client, and I think that I think there can be two sides of this. There's the side exactly that you described. You know, that whether there's basically a belief, they may be conscious or not conscious of it, that I'm not worthy of it, I'm not really worthy of this success, I'm not good enough. And as you say, that's going to absolutely stop you, it's going to hold you back, it's going to limit you on all sorts of levels. You've just, right there's a block in front of you. I had somebody the other day who, it was far more, he worked really hard, and he was carrying a little bit of a belief that he was just kind of really tough on himself. And I said to him, what I want you to do is to see and list all of your achievements, all the things that you've done, because I want you to be aware of it. It's like if I was coaching somebody and they were an athlete, you've got to know what your strengths are, you've got to know what your magic is, so that you can really build on that. Diana, I want to ask, where somebody who, and there might be some people listening to this or listening to this now or listening to it on playback, where they might recognize this, some of these things, they might think, actually, yeah, I've got that thing where I'm not good with numbers, or, you know, maybe I don't deserve this success, or success is something that happens to other people, or, yeah, I'm really nervous when it comes to speaking up, or public speaking. Are there any initial tips that you would share with them? And obviously it's going to depend how deep-seated that, obviously it's very deep-seated and they've tried stuff, they might need to seek out someone like yourself. But if somebody's got a little bit of this, are there any things that they could do that to begin to shift some of those beliefs and those thought beliefs and those patterns?
First of all, step outside of yourself to observe your responses to the situation. If it's about going to a business networking, for example, business networking meetings tend to have a circle of business people and who speak for 1 minute about what they have to offer and perhaps who they're looking for as a client. Now, you're expected to speak for 1 minute at that occasion. Could you go along and just attend the meeting and just say something very basic, just to get the ball rolling? Be an observer as to how you are. Be an observer as to how other people are. Learn from the ones you think have got what it takes. You try and mirror how they behave. Model yourself on people who do what you want to do, how you'd like to be able to do it, to be seen to be doing it.
I like that. I like that thing about observing, really noticing where are the areas, becoming aware and so on. And then I like that very practical tip, if it's something like, be it cold calling or whatever it might well be, or going to a networking event and going along just observing and spotting who does that well. And I think the other thing that strikes me that I think is interesting, Diana, isn't it? You know, when some people have got this belief that I'm not good at this or I'm not good with people, I would also say, where are the areas of your life I'd kind of challenge it. Where are the areas of your life where you are good with people? Because it might be at home with the family, you're a scream, you're the life and the soul of the party, or that, you know, socially, or when you're doing sports and so on. So if that belief isn't true anywhere, then it's not true. So start spotting the areas where you are good and thinking other ways that I can also transfer that into those other areas. But I guess that they're also, Diana, aren't there? There are times whereby there may well be things where they are more pronounced on any level. And then I would really strongly recommend, let's say you're not good with business finance. Actually, could you do a course? Could somebody help you? Chat to somebody who's good at that, because I think it's so important, isn't it, to become resourceful, begin to get the support that you need. And you don't necessarily need to pay for it. There might be that you do an exchange. One person's you're good with admin, somebody else is really good with finance. They might help you, or they might even do some finance for you. You might do some admin for them. But I think it's so important, isn't it, there to begin to spot where you're strong, where you're weak. If you need help on that level to either clear the beliefs, or you need somebody to actually practically help you with that, because otherwise you could sit with this stuff for years.
I agree totally, Raj. And often sole traders can barter with each other, and that can be very useful. So, for example, I'm working with the mind. Someone can have a fear of the dentist, come along to me, and I can go to them for, I don't know what they are, a personal trainer or a massage or something. I love massages, so I'd be delighted to swap with someone like that.
It's a good point. It's so good a point. Yeah, sorry, Dana.
What? So the good thing is that to recognise, I need a bit of help on this, and not to feel that it's a flaw in your character. It's just what is.
Yeah. And begin to see the fun in it, because I remember that, you know, for example, as a coach, and I share this in the Soul Trader book, I've probably received, I would estimate, £250,000 worth of goods via exchange. I coached a lawyer who did my terms and conditions when I started 10, 12 years ago. I did an exchange with a lawyer just recently when I did the terms and conditions for soultrader.biz. I've exchanged with people to do websites. I've exchanged with people to do, you pretty much name it. I've had people who come to my workshops, the British Library, and pay me in cakes. I love it. Because I think one of the things that's also powerful, I think, when you're a small business owner or sole trader, is, I think you're absolutely right, you can barter and so on, and also sometimes, especially if you've got to meet people who are complementary. Let's say you do flower arrangement and somebody else does, they do events, and somebody else perhaps does cookery. You know, all of a sudden you become advocates for each other's business, business. And powerful things happen. And I know that you've done stuff like this where you've worked collaboratively with other people who may also be healers and therapists. This is really, really powerful. And so you find that you're not only exchanging those kind of skills and you're getting the support that you need, you're broadening your offering. You can work all sorts of collaboratively, and you're just also personally and professionally be strong in all sorts of different areas. And I think it's something that people really do underplay in business.
I think it's a very good thing, particularly in the early stages of business, when you're still trying to establish yourself and become your business. And so if you've got people out there who've used your services, as you say, on this swap basis, then they are out there saying, wow, if you need, for example, for me, a hypnotherapist, Diana's the one to go to. You become the go-to person in your profession. So it's fantastic, and that goes on year after year. So absolutely, it's a brilliant way to get started.
Right. I want to just bring in a few of the kind of questions that come up and that people ask me. So just kind of, and to partly to kind of consolidate the ground that we've already covered. So in terms of the spring cleaning your life, let's start off with your workspace and with your home space. And as Diana was saying there, you know, if some things are particularly tricky, start with the thing that's a quick win. If you know that the kitchen's actually more or less done, there's just some boxes, start with that and then move on to those other those other particular kind of areas. And then to begin to identify some kind of priorities. I think also, I mean, one of my tips as a coach would also be perhaps come up with what's one priority for your home life. What's perhaps one priority for your for yourself and your health. You might think, actually, you know what? I'm wanting to go walking once a month. I'm wanting to go to the gym twice a week or whatever it is. And maybe then what's one priority for your business? So it might be in the key compartments of your life. You know, it might be in that home or relationships, and then business. Come up with one priority. I think that in this realm of spring cleaning, that can be useful, because then you can really begin to identify what's really important. Because what we're doing here is that we're clarifying, we're cleansing, we're getting more clarity, and so simplicity is really, really important. And we're doing this not just for the sake of it, but when you clear space, you can see more, you can have more clarity. One of the common things that comes up to me, people ask for more focus, for more clarity, and so on. So the clearer you are, the clearer things will be. As we said, that you can't pour more water into a full cup. Then we talked a little bit about some of these beliefs that people hold. Spot what the beliefs are. What are your strengths? Be aware of your strengths, perhaps list what your weaknesses are and where are the areas where you need perhaps some help. Who are the people you know and that you could collaborate with, and that way you can get those areas where you need strength. And don't feel as though you need to tackle it all at the same time. Diana, I wonder, do you want to add?
Yes, yeah. I wanted to add into that, Raj, that so many people, we run our lives on autopilot. We are creatures of habit. We are used to taking the same route to work each day, doing the same things, eating the same things, perhaps. A lot of habit that are going on day after day, week after week, month after month. And what we need to do is to start to learn to break out of that solidity of which we are living our lives, to break free from it by installing some kind of change each day. So we get used to playing with change, to accepting change and welcoming change and having fun with change. It might be get off the bus a stop earlier. It might be putting your left leg into your trousers first instead of your right leg. Whatever it is, have fun with it, so that you can actually start to realize that you don't have to do the same thing all day, every day.
This is what you're saying is so powerful, and it beautifully segues us into the third part of the talk. We've talked about spring cleaning your life, and I think there'll be a couple of things just to pick up on the relationship side, perhaps before we close, because sometimes there might be some business or whatever relationships or home relationships that need to change. We've talked a little bit about the mindset kind of stuff, but you've brought us beautifully into this third bit about spring cleaning your business. But equally also your life, and that change is important. I love the fact that you said that, you know, begin to welcome change and so on, and by starting changing one thing, because what can happen often for business owners is that you might be stuck in the same routine, or you might be thinking, how can I bring in more clients, or, you know, my days just look the same all the time and I can't seem to be doing this, or I seem to, you know, start off the day and I've got a lot of energy, and then by midday the confidence has gone or the focus has gone and so on. And I think this tip that Diana's saying is going to shift things up, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about the changing seasons. Also, they can be a prompt for us to change things. I think that this point is so fundamental. So I would add to that, you know, what are some of the things that you are wanting to change? Again, maybe write that down. You might think, okay, you know what, there are a couple of clients, I'm wanting to change that. You know, these clients aren't serving me, or I'm wanting to change maybe into this area. I'm wanting to move into this area. I've mainly been doing, let's say that you were a jewelry maker and you've been mainly working with silvers, and you think, actually I want to move into wood, or you might have started as a therapist working with individuals and you think companies. Acknowledge all the different things that where you're wanting change, which is really useful, and then start off by making, even as Diana says, simple silly changes to prove that you can change it. Getting off the stop earlier or what have you might also be, and then bring that into the business. What are some changes? So you might think, start off every day turning on your computer and turning your email on. Well, instead of starting every day and turning your email on, why not open a document and so on? Get into those habits. And I would say also, as a coach, if you find that you're stuck with certain things, or if certain things become priority, let's say you're at a point in your business, as happens for many sole traders, where you're doing what you love, but money is a challenge. And this is this is an area that I enjoyed playing with a number of years ago. I thought to myself, I love what I do, but it's actually time to make sure that the business is doing financially better. I'm now established. And one of the things that I really began to enjoy and to love doing, and I love it now, is that every day, I'll start off with something in the business that is related to the financial side of the business. So if somebody's emailed me an inquiry about coaching, I will make that the priority because that somebody might hire me as a coach. If I've got invoices to do, whatever, I will do it first thing. I can't tell you now how much I love invoicing, because then I know that that's relating to the bottom line of the business. So have fun with these things. Find your own particular way. Spot it, become aware of it, as Diana's saying. Start off with silly little things that you might well change. Change the time of day you'll have your lunch, the time of day that you'll have your cup of tea. Change all sorts of things. Change the seat that you're sat in. And then you'll begin to have fun with change, and you'll start to begin to let things in. Perhaps start to say yes to networking events that people are inviting you to. So you might normally say no to things. Start saying yes to things. Anything else you want to add on that, Diana? Because it's so fundamental, isn't it? Once you start playing with change, as you say, you can change some of the things the old things that perhaps aren't serving you, and also you're beginning to start playing with the new, right?
Yes, and you know, think about who could I do a swap with. Start to do swaps that can help you and can help your business, can help your lifestyle, whatever aspect of your life or your business, your health. Start to think how I can sort of enrich my life, enrich me, enrich my business.
I love that. You know, one of the things that I'm going to do, and we were talking about very briefly, that I'm going to challenge people. This seminar, this webinar is due to last until 8:30. But I want to do what I do sometimes with some of my clients. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you've got 15 minutes. You might be just listing, okay, these are my priorities for the rest of the year. This is the one thing I'm wanting to do at the home. This is one thing I want to do in my business, or this is the one thing I'm wanting to do in terms of my relationships, whatever it might well be. We might want to just start clearing up the emails or whatever, or a task that you have meant to do, a small task. So you be just, because with these things, it's not just about talk, it's about action. Diana, I want to touch on something that I think is really important before we head into the final portion of this and then begin to wrap things up. And that's, you know, sometimes when we begin to spring clean, so we've done a spring clean in the home, and we become aware of some of the beliefs and so on, or the habits, in fact, that we're doing in our business, and we're beginning to change things up. And perhaps we're going out a bit more, or we're doing some things that we didn't do, making calls where we weren't making enough, or maybe one of the changes you might think, okay, I'm going to start using social media. I believe before I couldn't, but I'm doing an exchange with somebody, and they're now helping me set up my social media. So think about what's the area of your business that you could do most benefit from, and that to make a change with, and find somebody in that area who can help you. Happened to me just yesterday. I was coaching somebody, and they're an actor, they're a performer, and they need a website. You know, so I'm just saying this example because it's very true and near and present. And I said to him, well, who do you know who does website? Turned out his nephew does website, somebody else who he knew did websites. I said, how can you exchange things for them? He was really good. He used to kind of do some training, helping people to sell. Actually, fun enough, selling without selling, you know, influence. So here's all sorts of things he could do. And I said to him, also, who are people who would love to do that for you? Who would be happily spend half an hour to show you how to fill in a spreadsheet? Who would happily, you know, help you with writing a letter or whatever? You know, some things don't need to be big, long-term things. But I want to now that we've talked about, I want to talk about the other key area here, which is relationships. Because sometimes in this movement, and I'm sure we both experienced it, that what happens is some of the friendships, some of the relationships, perhaps even the partner, or whatever, sometimes as we evolve and as we progress, we can look around and think, you know what, that client, they're a headache. They're no longer serving us. You know, that friend of mine, I need to turn down the amount of time with them, and equally you might need to turn up some of that time. Diana, I want to talk about this. Does this come up for you in your work, where some people realize as they're moving forward and as they're making these changes that actually they're beginning to need to make some changes in terms of relationships of people who are around them, perhaps personally and also professionally?
Yes, you know, it's said that we are the average of the 6 people we spend the most time with.
Love it.
So, you know, evaluate that. Maybe make a list of those 6 people and just have a think about that. Are they the 6 people you need to be spending the most time with? You know, sometimes we need to have an audit of our relationships as well as our work.
Diana, that is so powerful, that point there, even just to sit with. And I was going to say meditate on. And in fact, you know, I'd invite people to do that. Who are those 6 people you spend so much time with? What's that saying about you? And they also say, you know, if you, lots of people say linked to that, if you want to find out who somebody is, I'd spend a little bit of time thinking about who are their friends, you know, who are their friends, because that will tell you a lot about who that particular person is. So what's that saying about you? And what are the areas where you need to perhaps develop? There are lots of people who are very, very talented. I remember once the singer Björk says that when she's making music or doing things, she wants to work with people who she says are either equal or even better than her, so that she can learn from. Don't be afraid by associating with yourself with people who are more established with business, spending time with other people in business. When you're at that networking events, you know, talk to these people, befriend them. I remember that when I first trained as a coach, and sometimes there might well be industry groups and so on, chatting to other people in your field who've established, who are perhaps further down that road, to chat to them. Most of them are delighted to share their tips. I was earlier on today, a couple of days ago, contacted by by a young person wanting to get into media, and in fact making a film about it, and I was more than happy. He said, would you be happy to appear on film? And I also gave him some tips. I do that often, all the time, sharing a little bit of information and so on. Somebody was trying to get into coaching the other day, dropped me a line. I spent some time. So if you're in that position yourself, give some time to somebody else, but equally, look out, spend some time with those people. Yes. Chat to them, say, well, could I for me to begin to lift you up? And then it might well be that then you've evolved. And I think this is so important, isn't it? And this links to the mindset. You're beginning to evolve rather than being dragged down by the lowest common denominator of the people you know. You're beginning to move yourself up. My tip in this area is also, if you realize that there are some relationships and so on that aren't working for you, see it as a volume knob. Begin to turn down the amount of time with some friends and so on. Maybe, you might first of all need to make excuses, or be saying, actually, I now need to focus on my business, when the times when they're trying to get you out socially and so on. You know, begin to wind down those relationships, but also begin to turn up like a volume knob. You know, turn up where is it you need to spend more time. It might be that there's loved ones, family members who need a little bit of time, what have you. So become aware, you know, which relationships can you begin to turn down, which can you turn up? And there'll be some relationships where you're going to need to have some conversation where you're saying, actually, you know what, I know you're busy now, this is where your life's taking you, this is where my life's taking to. And I would say to you, leave those relationships with a good heart, wishing them well. And it might be sometimes that's just emotionally in your own mind. Sometimes it's not even that the conversation needs to be had. But again, Diana, on that, you know, where people are stuck with relationships, any tips there where people realize that they really do need to move on from relationships?
I think you're absolutely right, Rash. Leave the relationship in good heart, wishing them well. To remain relevant in the situation, so that you can hold your head up high. Who are we to judge others? But on the other hand, you need to be mindful of yourself and your needs, and they must come first. If you're going to be able to run a business, you've got to be able to keep that energy up, that motivation up, that drive up, day after day after day. And you need to have people around you who are, what the phrase, radiators, not drains. Have you heard that one?
Yeah.
People who radiate energy, enthusiasm, motivation, joy, optimism, not people who are negative, depressed, pulling you down. So you can keep that motivation up, have the people around you who can give that synergy with you.
It's huge, isn't it? If it's significant for kids at school, if we know, and if we're mindful we've got kids or nieces and nephews and we're concerned by who they're hanging around with, we know it has an impact on them, then we buy the same thing in terms of business, in our life, and all aspects of our lives. It's absolutely true. Before we close, Diana, and leave them with that little bit of time to begin this kind of process, I just want to touch on perhaps any tools and techniques that people can use. And the one that's coming to my mind that I just want to throw a few out there for people to kind of explore. I think there's a few, there's a few things that I'd really encourage people to do, and some of them almost aren't techniques. With this thing, if you're wanting to clear things, or if you're wanting to clear your mind or move forward, the first thing I want to say is that when you're going to sleep and when you're waking up, what times are you at your best? Are you getting the sleep, powerful recharge or energizer? In some you might be in regular breaks and you need to be getting that sleep, starting and leaving at a good hour with a clear desk. I'm a big fan of nature. So I recommend people often go, it's better to go around than prologue this way. You go like 1 minute you had 100 things that you thought were going on your mind. By the time you've been walking around the park for 20 minutes, you're not even interested in that thing that was bothering you before, because nature's done that work. And I am also a big fan of relaxation, or for some of you, meditation or silent prayer, whatever it might well be, whatever it is that centers you, whatever it is that quietens the mind, because that can be really, really useful. So begin to explore those things. And Diana, when people come to you, are there any particular techniques that you would flag up, either that people can use themselves or that they can see an expert with you if need be, to additionally help them perhaps to shift some of the habits, or just to help them in terms of their relaxation? Because I know there's a number of tools that you have, and a number of skills that you have.
Yes, I agree with you, Rashid, about as you go to sleep at night and as you wake up in the morning, if you've got a habit, a mindset that's not really serving you, but you want to have a good go at trying to sort it yourself, as you go to sleep at night, that's called the hypnagogic state. As you go to sleep at night and as you wake up in that morning, in that halfway house, when you're kind of neither fully awake or fast asleep, in that halfway house, that's in the hypnagogic state, which is where hypnotherapy came from, hypnosis. That's when to put into your mind what it is you want for yourself, how you want to be thinking, how you want to be feeling, whether it's I can be good at public speaking, or I can organize my accounts, I can enjoy seeing clients, I can, whatever it is that you've been struggling with, put it into your mind, some positive language within yourself. And also, as you say, walking around the park. Walking is another form, because it's got a rhythm to walking. It's a good way of being able to install the habit. By saying the positive of what you want to achieve. You know the phrase, fake it till you make it. So put that message into your mind as in a positive language. You know, the unconscious mind doesn't understand the negative. So you can't say, I don't worry, or don't worry, because don't doesn't come into your unconscious mind. It just hears worry. So instead, turn it into a positive language of be calm, be optimistic, be thoughtful, be mindful, that sort of thing. Now, you do what you can on your own. If you can't achieve the change in the mindset, then it's time to look out for a professional who can help you. And if you've got someone in your circle who you feel is a good person to go to, then that's great. If you need professional help, you know, sometimes things like public speaking, often I can deal with in one session. And this can be something that's dogged somebody for decades.
Yeah.
And able to then deal with it possibly in 1 or 2 sessions. Isn't it worth it just to sort it and get on with your life and boost your...
It's a really good point there, Diana. You know, it's a bit like, you know, just in the same way you might get a graphic design to help you with a piece of design you need to do, go to an expert to help you with that very specific thing that you would do. And I just want to say, maybe just very briefly on something like, you know, sometimes people, you know, one of the blocks, a block that people have, might even be like a word like hypnotherapy coach, or whatever word it might well be, or business advisor, it could be anything, or accountant. You know, perhaps gently look at it, gently have that conversation. Lots of this stuff, particularly hypnosis, we're just talking about the unconscious mind and the patterns, the rhythms, as you say, the records that we play, and it's about just being mindful of the ones we play and just replacing it. The other thing I want to add is that I think it's really important. I'd say, as a tip, focus on the things that you can do. So often let's focus on what you can't. Begin to focus, what are you really good at? Bring it to your attention. Build that as a muscle as well. We're fast running out of time, Dinah, but before I let you go, I just want to ask you, if people are looking to find you, where can they find you? And if you just wanted to wrap up the things that we were saying today in just 1 or 2 thoughts or tips, could you give us that? So give us your website and then give us just 1 or 2 thoughts just to wrap up.
Okay, fine. So you can find me at Dune Hypnotherapy, D-U-N-E, hypnotherapy.co.uk. I operate out of London Bridge, Dulwich and Clapham. I also work off Skype as well, so I'm working with people globally now. I was working with someone in New Zealand recently, so it was something like, was it 8:30 here and 9 a.m. here and 9:30 there. So it's very nice. The lady was in her nightwear and was able to just slip into bed and go to sleep after the session. So that's all fine. We can work with anyone, anytime. In terms of tips, I think just remember we're all human. We're all fallible. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses, and that's just to be human. And and like you say, remember your strengths, and you're doing what you do, I hope, because you love doing what you do. So just allow others to help you for the areas where you don't enjoy those bits so much.
Wonderful.
And that's just being normal.
I love that. I just think that's a lovely way to round it up. And I would just say, you know, appreciate who you are. Take that little bit of time, you know, spend that little bit of time around the house and around the office space. Clear the decks as much as you can. Focus on perhaps one thing that's really important as a priority for you for the next season at home, at work and in relationships. Do just a bit, turn up or turn down those relationships that aren't serving you, and enjoy it. And as Diana says, you know, do reach out for other people who can help and utilize your circle and build your circle. So Diana, I want to thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. We'll have to invite you back again. We'll include a link when I pop this up also on YouTube to dunehypnotherapy.co.uk. And so on. And I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in tonight. Thank you so much. There's more of these on soultrader.biz. We run one of these webinars once every month. There's podcasts for those of you who love listening to stuff. There's a free chapter of the book on Soul Trader. There's free membership, and there's a Coach Yourself program if you're interested in that. So visit soul-trader.biz if you're interested in this. Diana, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I've had fun. See you again soon.
Right,
bye.
Thank you very much. Everyone, I'm going to wave you all goodbye as we say goodbye to you.
Bye.
And before you all go, everyone, so you've got 10 minutes now to start your list or start clearing up. Right, Rashid said. See you later. Bye.
Bye.